Hello and welcome to another episode of A Wicked Parley. Tonight we're going to be talking about trans women participating in sports. Not because I think that women shouldn't compete in sports, not the fact that I think trans people are necessarily wrong, but I think the notion that a person who is a trans woman participating in a women's sport has some problems, and we're going to go over those problems. So the first issue that I think that should be brought to 100% light is the fact that there is a difference, biologically speaking, between a man and a woman. And so when a man transitions into a woman, they're going to have inherent biological advantages that are going to make them somewhat superior to other athletes who are biologically female. The problem with this particular thing obviously stems from a couple scientific facts. The first scientific fact that's kind of important is to take note of is the fact that men traditionally have a larger heart. They have an increased density when it comes to their bones. There is a sizable difference when it comes to muscle mass distributed throughout the body. And all of these factors contribute to a dominating demeanor when it comes to athletic potential. Now, not everyone's created equally. Some people are very fortunate through wonderful genetics that afford them wonderful athletic abilities, and while others don't. But at the end of the day, these particular facts, which are pretty normal across the board, there are differences, I'm not going to deny that, but the vast majority are pretty standard when it comes to these things. All point to a significant difference. So the next issue that we need to discuss has to do with the fact that there are a lot of people who say that they feel, and they do, and they manipulate the issue at hand. Now the issue itself is pretty cut and dry. Is it fair for, essentially trans women to participate in women's sports? Because the logical conclusion between all this stuff, more or less, is that a trans woman who has passed through puberty, who has lived a significant portion of their life as a man and now transitioned to a woman, is going to inherently have specific problems that I think that are going to elicit a complete dominance in any field. If they're athletically inclined, then they're going to quickly become dominant just because of the biological facts that were previously discussed. Now, I don't know about you, but if I watched a match between a trans woman and a normal woman, and the trans woman has no skill whatsoever, and just takes hit after hit after hit, all right, and then proceeds to knock out the person through just brute force, how do you explain that? What part of that equation is fair? Do you think that women have the same opportunity as men when it comes to these sorts of things? I mean, if they do, then why can't women beat men in other sports? I mean, there are examples all the time when it comes to this. There's a pretty famous example of a junior high school soccer team beating the world champion female team in soccer. There's not an inherent advantage. How did that happen? Why is it that the best tennis players in the world, which are men, are ranked, in the top, let's say the top 100, right? How can the 100th best male tennis player beat handedly the number one best female tennis player? That's because there's an inherent biological truth to this entire argument. And that the answer to this particular idea altogether is the fact that this is a denial. This is a complete and total denial of the actual biological truths, the biological facts behind the issue. And no matter how many times someone argues or someone says, I feel this way about this topic in this discussion, it always tries to ignore the science, ignore the evidence, and promote some sort of belief that they're right. And at the end of the day, I think it's not fair. It's not fair to women. That's the main issue I have. I'm not going to talk about the issue of fairness when it comes to trans because I have a completely different take, which I'll get to towards the end of this episode. But the primary thing is this. If women compete in sports and are trying to get scholarships to go to colleges, they're trying to have a way that they can actually compete in a way that's fair and balanced, then how can we honestly say that a trans woman competing in the same sport can make them have any semblance of actual fair play when it's been proven time and time and time again that these particular biological facts back up and support these things and put women at a complete disadvantage. How can we tell women, hey, you can be a strong, powerful, independent woman and you can train your entire life for the Olympics, but now we're allowing trans athletes, you get beat handedly by, essentially a trans woman. How is that fair? How is it fair to that woman? I think it's not fair. I think it's a way of skirting the real issues, and I think it puts the blame on other people. The main problem, I think, with all this stuff is that we've allowed politics to dictate every avenue of expression. We've allowed politics to dictate what our beliefs truly are. Politics are supposed to be policies that are supposed to aid in the overall structure of society. They aren't there to dictate terms. You shouldn't be told, hey, you have to do this because this is the right thing. It should be, this is the law because it's the morally correct thing. That's the only term that should be dictated to you. If it's not morally a question, when it's a free choice, then it shouldn't be forced upon you. And I sense that this particular thing is one of those things. It is a choice that someone decides. It is a way they're choosing to express themselves. And through that expression, they're going to be given a specific set of responses. And I think that this is something that we should not allow. We should not allow to continue to indulge people in the ability to say and do things that lead to the destruction of other people's lives. So you guys may think, okay, I'm harping on trans, I'm not allowing them to explore what they want to do, express who they are, and I'm denying things. And I'm not going to deny that that's exactly what's going on. But I want to point out the fact that I think there is a place for trans people participating in sports. And I think it should be inherently linked to the biological sex that they were assigned to at birth. If you're a trans woman, you should play with male athletes. If you're going to play in a sport, you should be competing with people who are of physical standards that are similar to you. And if you're a woman and you want to compete with men, I think that that's fine, I suppose, but I don't really think that that's really going to be helpful to you. And so I think that that also should be gated in that particular way as well. Because I think the truth is this: we wouldn't have a separate league for people who are homosexual. If you're a gay guy or you're a lesbian or whatever you might be, you aren't going to be suddenly classified to play in a completely different league because of how you express yourselves, who you choose to be with, who you are. They play in the leagues that they are, and I think this is no different. And I think that the idea that trans women are able to compete with women is an overreach, and it's something that should be changed. I'd like to discuss what do we do with trans people who are wanting to compete in sports. I think there's a couple different avenues that could be explored. I think the first avenue is that have an entirely new form of sports. We've split up women and men's sports. Maybe we can have a trans league. I know that there are many people who have argued against this because they understand that the women's sports league already struggles when it comes to advertisers and being able to properly support the women who participate, because it's not the most desirable thing to watch, as typically sports are a male-dominated area of entertainment. Not that women don't, it's male-dominated. But if that's something that someone would want to consider, then I'd be open to that particular notion. There is, of course, the other option, which is the fact that we could have trans people participate in the necessary leagues that are for their assigned birth. If a trans woman was biologically born a male, went through puberty, lived most of their life as a male, and decides, I want to participate in sports, well, that's fine, but you participate with everybody else who was biologically born a male. And the same is true for a man or woman. So I'm not trying to discriminate either side. The thing is that I think that everything needs to be fair. And when you have someone who has the clear biological advantage, you skew things and make them not fair for everyone else competing. And because of that, I think that it's important just to split up these two things, and I think that these two different avenues might be an okay way. I think the third option, which I didn't really mention, has to do with the fact that you could just not have them participate in sports, which I think is not the correct course of action. I mean, you wouldn't have someone who was homosexual, gay or lesbian or whatever, barred from participating in sports. But you also wouldn't have a gay guy play in the women's league. They wouldn't have necessarily, whatever else is in the spectrum of sexuality, competing in other ways. They would compete in the arena by which they were biologically able to. And I think that this is what needs to happen with trans. I think that trans activists and other things that have assigned to the movement have done an overreach. They've overcorrected for this particular thing, and I think it's come at the cost of many young women out there. And there are plenty of evidence, plenty of videos, plenty of articles, plenty of people talking about this particular issue that point to and say the exact same thing. So at the end of the day, I think it's best for all of us to consider what's the total cost of this. Who really gets affected at the end of the day? And do you think that men are going to want to watch trans women play sports? Because the more they do, they're going to split the audience. And do you really want that? I don't think so. If you guys disagree with me, email me, message me, spread the message of what's going on in the show. If you don't like anything and you do like stuff, then just hear about it. Let's have a conversation. Because at the end of the day, these things aren't going to get solved if no one does anything. And so, at the very least, let's have a conversation. Let's educate one another when it comes to these things. I'd like to thank you all for watching. Thank you for your consideration. Please, if you like the video, hit the like button. And if you want to talk about some of your ideas, share it in the comment section. Have a good night, everybody. And